Craig and Tim clips.
So the topic of the day,
Let's roll the music.
Okay, hooray! It's time for the topic of the day.
So
Topic of the day today is a very serious one. Let's get serious.
Yeah. So the topic of the day is fate.
Fate.
So let's talk.
Fate has it that today's topic is fate.
So, and this is because of the interview with Tyler last week. He was talking about the events with Lady Gaga and how they read the letter, which is an awesome story.
Yep.
I really appreciated that he shared it with us. But I asked him because I just thought of it. Do you believe in fate?
Yeah,
Fate that she read that letter. She was bound to read that letter, and that was going to happen. Of the hundreds of letters she gets, she was going to read it, and that's how the evening was going to go. So we talk about fate in many, many scenarios.
Yeah.
In positive things, like it was fate that I met my spouse. It was fate that I would end up in this position in my employment.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that's how it was going to go. And some people say, you know what, when it's your time to go, when the bullet has your name on it, it's your time to go. It's fate, and there's nothing you can do about it. Right. And we even use it in negative things, like people get a diagnosis of a cancer. Well, it was my fate to get this cancer, and I'm going to now live my life and reach so many people. And that was my lot in life at the end of my life, to use my unfortunate event to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So my question is this, very simply: do you believe fate is actually real, or, and this is the second possibility, do we use the word F-A-T-E, fate, to just rationalize events so they make sense in the grand scheme of life in our brains? Question.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, that's a Mandela effect. I don't know if you know that.
Okay, well, let's just I can't do it.
So fate. I've done some research on fate since you wanted me to have this as a topic of the day here. So fate is like it was going to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
But in reality, life is cause and effect.
Right.
Right. So Tyler, he explained what he did. He laminated his paper. He did all the work. He made sure that it was big enough writing and it had Lady Gaga stuff on it and everything like that. Right. And when he threw it up there, he threw it up after, tried to be on top of all the other letters. Right. Cause and effect. Like the cause, what he did had the effect of her picking it up. Now, is it fate that she picked it up because she would have no matter what? I don't think so. I think the fate was in place. Now, he says it was fate.
Yeah.
But I think the fate was in place because he put in the work.
Right.
Right? So if he didn't do all that work, it wouldn't have happened. Right? Like, in general, she couldn't pick up his letter unless he wrote the letter.
Yeah.
Right? And was it his fate to write that letter?
Yeah.
Or was it his fate to have the issue that he had to write the letter about in the first place?
Yeah.
Everything that lined up as it went.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not sure I agree or disagree. I'm just there is a movie with John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale. I can't remember the title of it, but the whole thing is they meet, and then he asks for her number, and she's like, well, let's let fate decide. And she writes out the letter, and she throws it somewhere, like it was just gone. And he's like, well, if it's meant to be, that you'll find this number somewhere, or something to that effect, right? Just making so it's almost impossible. So fate would intervene and actually bring them together if they're meant to be together, right? And then the end of the movie is like he actually does find this number or whatever in some, I can't remember if it's a book or in something like that.
So
and they get together.
So fate.
And I'm just using that as an example to say she went the other way, in which, as Tyler did XYZ cause effect, she did the opposite. She took all the cause effect out of it,
threw it away,
and just left it up to fate
and chance.
Yeah. So you're saying there's some things we can affect, and fate says no. If it's meant to be, again, if the bullet has your name on it, the bullet has your name on it.
So now we look at it from a point of view of like from a belief system point of view now, right? And if you think about it from like God has your life, he knows your direction.
Yeah.
And I remember a message by Pastor Leon about the library, right? The library in heaven, right? Where your book is written in heaven. And you open up that book and you go through the pages and you're like, hey, I don't remember this.
Right.
And then God goes to you, well, that's because you didn't follow what you were supposed to follow.
Right.
You went to this page instead, right? And
Yeah.
you skipped over a few things because you didn't allow them to happen in your life.
Right.
Right. Like the fate of that happening in your life is something that's really interesting to me. Like, is there things that we miss out on
Right.
in our life? Like Tyler getting that note written and read. If he didn't write the note,
Right.
would that be in his book of life still?
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, like I didn't meet Lady Gaga. And he's like, yeah, because you didn't follow your heart.
Yeah.
And your heart said, I have to write that letter. And your heart says, I have to laminate that letter. Your heart said all these things.
And of course, there is a chance that letter still wouldn't have, like, there's a chance he could have went through, did all those things, and that letter wouldn't have been written.
But in the belief system that your book of life is written, if you didn't do the things that you were driven to do and like were put into your heart to do, you wouldn't have lived that page.
So
in, the book of
in
life.
essence, I've heard the example of a GPS system where you are meant to go to, let's say I was going to your house today and the GPS was pushed to your house. And if I'm driving and I go off over here and I stop at place to get coffee before I come, the GPS is going to recalculate to go here and here and here, and wherever it is, always constantly recalculate. If you're going 3 hours out of the way, if you keep that GPS system, that end result, and again, that end. So my question is, maybe that end result, is that fate? Like I know the little things, maybe. What about are we meant to do fate to do something big in our lives? Are you meant to do something that you're not doing now? Is there some fate that we aren't taking advantage of in the grand scheme of things?
So if you think about it, was it our fate to do this podcast? Because I didn't know you until 2019.
Right.
Right. And we didn't think about doing the podcast until 2023.
Right.
Right. So like, was that written? Was that fate that we're going to start this out in a living room in front of a TV, move to 2 different studios, repaint, recreate, and all of a sudden now we have guests coming in. Right? Like when we started a year ago, almost to the day, did we think we were going to have 25 guests in the studio for a year? Right?
I would say for sure not fate, because the effort was put in to do all those things. Everything that we've done is because of effort that was made.
Cause and effect,
right?
But like, was it our fate to do that?
Right. Not sure. I'll give you the opposite question. Flip it around and say, do you think people label things as fate to make sense, in order to make some things make sense in their world? Do you think that?
Well, yeah, like people will say, like, it was fate that I got into that car accident, or it was fate that I met this person.
How about this? I've heard some people say, I was late by 5 minutes, and there was no reason to be late. This train never hits, or this. I never forget my keys.
Great example. Yeah. The guy that didn't get on the plane that crashed in 9/11.
Right.
He slept in.
Yeah.
Was it his fate to sleep in?
Right. Or there's a really cool story about, the song American Pie? And that's about
drove my Chevy to the levee. The levee was
do you remember
dry.
who the artists who died in that plane crash?
It was Roy Orbison.
No,
Roy Orbison
came later. Richie Valens.
Yeah.
The Big Bopper. I can't remember his real name. And Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly.
So those 3 artists who were massive in that day, who, by the way, they crashed close to Fargo. Some people don't realize that. It's really cool. It's kind of close to this area.
Yeah.
The story goes, Richie Valens was on the back of the bus. And if you've ever traveled by plane or bus, back then it was totally different scenario.
Yeah, the buses were ridiculous.
It was so cold in the back. And again, he's coming to travel to Fargo in February.
Yeah, which is cold.
Cold, right? And he was so sick They actually drew straws because they only had 3 seats or something like that.
Okay.
And there was like him, and there was like some roadie there, some manager. I can't remember who the 4th person was. And they drew those sticks, the straws, and Richie Valens lost. Something like he lost, but the other guy felt so, and I might be mangling this story, but you get the idea, felt so bad that he was so sick and tired of being at the back of the bus. He said, "No, you take my spot." Because he kept whining about being in the back
On
of
the
bus.
plane?
Yeah, on the plane. So
Okay.
he kept whining about being in the back of the bus and being so cold. He really wanted to be on the plane.
Yeah.
Well, he gives it to him, or he exchanges it, or whatever, does whatever kind of agreement they have. And of course, then the guy wakes up the next day and realizes they're all dead.
Yeah.
So is it his fate? That, again, the same scenario, right? To not, we hear tons of these stories, right? And people will say, "I wasn't meant to be. I was meant to live a life, and I don't take it for granted."
Do you remember the movie Butterfly Effect?
Yeah.
With Ashton Kutcher?
Vaguely, I watched it once.
So the theory behind the butterfly effect is the fact that like just the flap of a butterfly wing could change the trajectory of your life.
Right.
Right. So like it's chaos theory. Essentially, the little things can lead to big changes, making it really hard to predict what's going to happen next. Right. So like, let's say, you didn't make that right turn, and then you just kept going straight. But then when that right turn, if you had made it, a semi blew a red light, and you would have got hit by that semi. Right. Or you screwed up, and like all these different things that can happen. Right. Like you slept in for the airplane, and all those little tiny, like just a minute little thing that can happen in your life that can change the trajectory forever. Right. So like, do you think that would be fate? Like, do you think that because you don't have control over some of these little things, does that make it fate?
Sometimes I struggle with things, and I come from a realistic point of view, maybe sometimes too realistic, right? So I would say, well, you slept in because you didn't set it, you moron. You didn't set your alarm properly. That doesn't make it fate. That makes you a dummy, and you got lucky. Right. So where does luck come in? Where does chance come into it? Right. And if we believe in fate, then we believe that somebody's holding the strings and making sure that it doesn't matter what we do. Again, we go back to when the bullet has your name on it, the bullet has your name on it. So it doesn't matter what I do. I can work out, I can eat properly, and it doesn't matter because it's fate that at age 86 and 6 months, I'm going to pass away.
So being a Christian, you have to live in faith. Right. And you have to live in the belief that God has a plan for you. Right. By not believing in fate, does that hurt your belief in God?
I'll follow up a question with a question.
Okay.
I'll add a question
to
you, and I'll come back to that. Is fate a word we use in religious, I'll call it church maybe, or do we have different words for it?
I don't know.
Like, I'm trying to, in my brain, it's like, do we use fate? Because I know what you said. From what we were brought up to believe, fate does not, I think, exist, because there are so many things, again, like the butterfly effect, or there are so many things we can do in our lives to adjust.
Well, it's exactly what Pastor Leon said. When you open up that book, there's pages in that book that you didn't get a chance to live. Right? Like, I was supposed to be 85 and I only lived to 60. And he's like, well, you smoked cigarettes all your life, and you drank heavily. So you hurt your plan.
Or our church in that instance wouldn't believe in an overall broad-scaping fate idea.
So there's fate, but you can, again, cause and effect. Determinism is what it's called.
So what's your definition of fate? If we can do things to adjust things or to change things, what, in your opinion, does fate mean?
Fate means that it was bound to happen because of the cause that you've been living.
So we create but isn't that the
we
opposite?
Create our own fate.
Okay, so then predestination, as far as being fate, does not exist. You would disassociate the two terms then.
I think that if you follow God's plan, listen for the word,
Yeah.
you can then live your fate
Right.
as predetermined. But you can get off of that
Yeah.
by eating wrong, drinking, doing the wrong things. You go bungee jumping and the rope snaps, right? Like there's different things that can
I'm just
affect
trying
your
to
fate.
I'm just trying to determine, based on the fact that we can control our situations to a certain degree, what the definition of fate is then.
So this is the end thing that I've got for fate.
Yeah.
I'll read it out and then you can
Okay.
tell me what you think. So fate might influence some things, but there is also randomness and the ability to make choices.
Right.
It's not completely one or the other. There's room for both fate and free will and how life happens. So essentially, fate exists with free will. If that makes sense.
It makes sense. I'm still struggling to understand then what the definition of what fate means in that scenario.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the question.
Yeah.
Maybe the question is for people out there, what do you believe in fate? And a secondary question, what the heck is fate?
Yeah.
Because I see there's a bit of a contradiction in my mind, and I could be wrong, but if fate means you're meant to be or do or be something, then how could our decisions change that if we're meant to do it? To me, it's a bit of a clash of ideas, and I'm having a hard time getting past that. But again, this is all conversation, so maybe those are the two questions to ask.
So question 1 is, do you believe in fate?
Yeah.
Question 2 is, what's your definition of fate?
Yes.
So, and then for me, like, I believe in fate, but I believe in fate based on works as well, right? Like things happen because of things happening.
Right.
And because, you might not control all those things. So like if somebody gets in touch with you for a really good, like expensive quoted job, you might not have reached out to that person.
Right.
That person may have reached out to you and put you in the right path to
Right.
accept or deny it.
Right.
Right? Do you accept your fate? Or do you try to change your fate? Right? And I think that there's two different ways to look at that. And I think if you don't accept it, you can redirect your fate.
Right. Either way, I think it's a deep subject matter. And I
think it's fun though.
It's fun.
It actually runs a little bit sideways with the universes.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. Because you could choose one way, and then all of a sudden the universe goes the other.
It stays in the same realm.
Sort of.
We're still in the same. I haven't got to the multiverse.
So, like the butterfly effect is multiverse. He lived multiple different lives because of one little choice he makes.
I'll have to rewatch the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it. I'll watch it again. That's my
think about the biggest things that have happened in your life.
Yeah.
And how they came about.
Right. The combination of just chance and action.
Right? Like when I went to open up that retail store up in Thompson.
Yeah.
The only reason why I was called and recruited for that was because my dad ran into the regional manager.
Right.
At the airport. And they said, hey, like, I'm looking for this kind of a person, blah, blah, blah. Now, is that fate? Because does fate bring them together?
Is that fate, or is that a random occurrence where you get into a conversation?
Which is strange, right? So, like, she has this random conversation with my father.
Yeah.
And my father is the exact person she should talk to.
Right.
Because she knows, like, he knows the person that she needs.
Right.
Like, does that... That's where fate gets into a little bit of a muddy water.
You could rationalize that two different ways. You could say, sure, it's fate. It was meant to happen. Either God brought it together, the universe, whoever you want to say, or you could say, listen, chance occurrences happen all the time, right? So, and I think that's that's what my question is, right? Are you making a different story in your mind?
No.
Either way, and you benefit one or you don't benefit the other?
So the whole butterfly effect thing with that is my dad meets her.
Yeah.
She tells him he gives her my phone number.
Yeah.
I get in contact with them. I get the job. I move to Thompson. Things happen in Thompson. I move back to Winnipeg. I meet Lorraine in Winnipeg.
Right.
I have kids down here.
Yeah.
None of that would have happened without that one meeting.
Right.
Now, it may have happened differently.
Yeah.
Right? Like things may have changed. But do I meet you?
Less likely.
If my dad doesn't meet her at the airport, do I meet you?
Yeah. I don't know.
Right?
There's a good chance to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where the fate comes into play.
Right.
In my mind, anyway. But again, I think that our lives are written for us.
Right.
We just need to live them.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway.
Thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show clips. If you want, click the subscribe button right in the middle here. And then there's an episode in front of me and an episode in front of Tim. Click on them. Keep on watching. Keep on watching and share with your friends. Thanks for watching the clip.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.